Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place where you are guaranteed to get smarter with every flight. And I mean that. I'll give you all your money back if you don't learn something from every single trip that we take. So I was hoping we could get that Lisbon flight in, but I ran into a bit of an issue that I'll tell you about in just a bit. But we were out in Slovakia instead. Yeah, Slovakia. And I'll tell you how I wound up out here as we start taxiing here in just a minute. But I've got another surprise for you. As I was looking around for a plane that would actually work and work properly and work out here, I discovered that they had just released the old Tecnam P2006T in the analog version. And since I already had the other version, they gave me a discount on this one. I think it was like 25 bucks. So that was great. And since it just came out, I'll go ahead and walk you through the startup procedures. This is not a review or a tutorial. You know, we don't usually do those on this channel, but since there's not much out here and I'm learning with you, I just made my note card fresh, stuck right into the top of my little console here. So let's see what we got going on here. So first we'll get rid of the yoke. Should probably shut the door. And let's go ahead and get our tie downs and all that stuff off. Okay, that should be good. And I think we're done with everything else. You can keep a map up over here, but we're going to have a little NavMap on, so we don't need that. That does lots of cool stuff. You can check it out on your own or watch some full-blown tutorial videos. Right now, let's just get this thing started up. Okay, so the master on, and then the fuel on for both of them. Whoa. Uh-oh. Oh. Man, oh man. Okay, we got that going. Okay, we got to take the throttles to about, it said put them at a third, but I found it would not start up unless they were at about a half. We'll take the props all the way up to full. And you have to put the chokes on, which is putting them both down. And then the ignition on, we'll do these one engine at a time. So the ignition on, and then the boost on, and then the starter. So we'll start the right engine first. Oh, and it takes a minute to crank, which I just love. I wish it made me do it a few times. That's why I got a gas-powered blower. If that thing starts on the first pull, I'm very disappointed. I want to have to take the spark plugs out and spray some carb cleaner in there. I really like to fight with these things, just like my planes. Okay, so that engine start is good. So after that, we can turn the field on, which I think is the same thing as a generator for the right-hand side. And the cross bus on, which starts on for some reason for the right-hand side. And then the choke off and the boost off for the right-hand side. So choke off, boost off, but we need to turn it back on so we can get our avionics going now. Okay, those are already good, both of those. I wonder why those start on. That's interesting because I don't have them on my console, but that's the deal. And the autopilot master on. Okay, and then we can start the other engine. So the sequence is ignition on, boost on, and then the starter. Okay, here we go. Come on, baby. Turn on over. There we go. Yep. All right. Okay, so those are on, so we can get the left generator on. Listen to the noise it makes. Hear that? And if you move back a little bit, like as you move around the cockpit, the sound of that also changes too. Okay, so let's see if everything looks good. We can turn this choke off. Turn the booster off. And I think we're ready to go. Autopilot master's already on. Okay. So everything appears to be in pretty good shape here. All right, real quick, while that's running up, let's get our yoke back, and let me adjust our camera just a little bit. There we go. Let's take a look at the Google map, just so you'll know where we are. So, Slovakia, right in the middle. It used to be Czechoslovakia, but now it's just Slovakia. And the town that we're in here is called, it looks like Kosice. That's not how you say it. I had to check it out. It's Kosice. So you emphasize that first syllable. And yeah, you're probably wondering, what am I doing out here? Well, there's a neat story behind that. So here's the airport we're taking off from. All kinds of airports out here. Lots of them are very small. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So we're going to come off this way. We're going to come down here. We're parked right about here. So we're going to have to come down this way. We're going to take off up here and then come out here because I need to get some altitude to see a gigantic, not even going to tell you what it is. This thing here is something gigantic and it's rusty, which is awesome. Then we're going to come out here by these little lakes, cruise up around this way. There's photogrammetry pretty much everywhere here. We're going to see where the border of it ends right down here, which is going to stick out like a sore thumb. But we're going to come up here, come over downtown. All the historical district is right down here by their main drag. All kinds of old train yards, very cool. Come up here, check out a nice, big, beautiful quarry. And their zoo is nice and big. We'll be able to see that up here. Come down through this side of downtown, check out a bunch of stadiums. I wish I would stop doing that. Let's zoom in some more. They got a bunch of stadiums, university down here. And then we're going to come up here to these lakes. And why do you think I'm selecting these lakes? That's an awfully flat edge right there. Up there too. What could be up there for us to look at? So we'll circle around these things, check out some beautiful, beautiful little towns in this little valley right here, come over here, and then land at a little airport that's somewhere over in this vicinity right here. Gonna be awesome. Only about 30 miles in total. Okay, so taxi light on. And let's turn that throttle down a little bit because that baby is just roaring. And let's go ahead and set our cruise altitude. Initially, it's going to be 2,000 feet. So we'll get that set up. And parking brake off. And I'm going to turn this way to try not to hit that little guy. So I don't know if the thing on this side of the runway is a taxiway or not because it's really slender. The actual taxiway that I'm sure is a taxiway is on the other side of the runway. So you have to cross the runway pretty good distance. Go to the other side, then taxi down. So we're going to see if we can take this little pathway over here. It's probably supposed to be for vehicle traffic, but we're going to drive down it. Alright, I need to see where it is. Okay, it's up here. It's this next right. So, how did I get out here in Kosice? Well, I was going to fly that Lisbon flight, as you know, and there were some issues out there with that, which I'll tell you about in a minute, because I might need a little help with you guys, because I'd still like to fly out there, but I need to see what exactly is going on with the graphics out there, because I was having a problem. But as I was setting up for another flight at another place, I always have to dump all of the scenery for the places that we're not flying, because despite having a 2 terabyte hard drive and nothing but the sim on my computer, I've only got about 50 gigabytes left, so I always have to clear out the scenery for areas that we're not flying over. And as I was doing that, I noticed for the first time, if you can believe it, that there's not just world updates, but city updates in there. I didn't know that there were also city updates, because usually when it tells me there's an update, I just install it without really looking at it. And one of the areas for Eastern Europe, I went ahead and opened it up and just looked at the cities that they had updated, and one of them was this place, Kosice. I'd never heard of it before. So I figured if they took the time to update it, they probably did some photogrammetry, and there must be something significant out here. So I did a little test flight, and man, is this going to be awesome. They've got everything. They got nice train yards, rusty factories, dams, yes dams, some old cathedrals, all kinds of incredible scenery. Really looks good. The fields look fantastic. So we're going to check it out. And I've been having all kinds of problems. I was wanting to take that mall, that stall plane, which they had updated recently. I know there wasn't a lot of popularity with that thing when it first came out, but it's on sale right now in the sim marketplace, so I picked that up. That was $14.99. Got in here because the main reason I wanted to fly it is because it has a... Alright, do I need to turn here? Nope, a little bit further. It has an autopilot I'd never seen or used before, and I wanted to check that out, but I was having all kinds of autopilot problems, which I'm still having. For I'd say at least half my planes, at least half the ones I tried to fly. And I pulled out my PMS GTN 750, which had caused me some problems before, and that did actually help out quite a bit. But not with that plane. So I don't know what's going on with that thing. Still having some troubles with it. I'd like to fly it, it's a cool plane, but when it's not on autopilot, it's kind of a handful. And then this one came up today. So this is what we're taking. Alright, so we're just going to turn off right here. We're not going to drive all the way to the end of the other end of the runway because we don't need to. So right when we get to the runway, we'll just go ahead and take off. And I've got the time of day set at about 7:30, which is just beautiful. Going to cast a nice glow on everything for us. And I did set up a camera in the back because they have a nice big picture window back there too. And there might be some stuff we want to take a look at with a little bit better view. Alright, yep, this is the runway. Okay. So once we get turned around, we'll just stop real quick and I'll get everything situated for takeoff and we'll be on our way. You can see it doesn't go too much further down there, just over that crest. Okay. I think the last time we took the other Tecnam was out in that Scotland flight, which was quite a while ago. Alright, so taxi lights off, landing lights on, 1 notch of flaps. We got our GPS set for CDI for GPS, so that's good. Get our transponder set to altitude, that's good. Both chokes are up. Alright guys, you ready? Let's do it! So there were at least 2 other cities, which I'd also never heard of. So we'll probably wind up checking those out too if they look anything as good as this. So these other little airports that are out here, this is the biggest by far. This is the international airport for the town. They only have this one runway, but there are probably, I don't know, 12 to 15 more little runways around here. Gears up. That's very loud. And flaps up. And all those little runways, the longest one is 1,600 feet. Nav on. And we'll climb at 600 feet a minute because this thing can do it just fine. But all those little runways are paved, which is something you don't see very often for something that short. And the one that we're coming into is 1,300 feet. And I had to do a little test flight to make sure we could get this thing down there, and we just barely can if I really grease it, so we'll see how that goes. So there's downtown. We're going to circle back around to the south to take a look at this big, huge steel mill. And I've got the graphics turned down, way down, but this plane does pretty good. Some of my others that had any extra glass in the cockpit did not do so well. All that stuff up ahead of us we'll see once we come back around. But look at that down there. Look at the junk in the yard. They got a little truck parked down there. You know I love that. All right, so let's start pulling things back a little bit. Once we get away from the city some, the stuttering will chill out some. And a good manifold pressure I've found is about just a little bit over 25 there. See it over there on the right? Yeah, so if you have a little bush plane or something you want to fly out here, there is no shortage of runways. And there's a lot of castles around here. Some of them are POIs in the sim, so I'm sure they look great. And there's even quite a few around this city, because this place was a pretty big deal back in the day. But unfortunately, all of them in the vicinity of this flight are ruins now. And the only one that has ruins that you can still see is kind of tucked down into some trees, so we won't be able to see it. But I'll tell you where it is, because there's a little bit of interesting history about that place too once we get out there. But this first thing we're going to see right over here is a big, huge, rusty old steel mill. And up until this January, that was run by U.S. Steel. They took it over from a company that must have been a local place because they had a very Slovakian-sounding name. So U.S. Steel took it over in 2000, and then Nippon Steel, the Japanese place, if that's how you say it, Nippon maybe? They own it now. But as we fly by, you'll still see that they have all the U.S. Steel labeling and stuff on it, which is pretty cool. And the only thing that I can really gripe about on this flight is that the photogrammetry cuts off right in the middle of the factory, which is just a huge bummer. So you can see they got some steam coming up from the other side there with no smokestacks, because there's supposed to be a big, huge, nasty, dirty, rusty thing over there too. But all they got was the smokestacks. But we'll see plenty of rust over here. And the train yards look just amazing. Trains all over the place out here. The power lines look great. Really, really good. Just a beautiful place. Alright, so on the side of this building just coming into view, see a little blue one right there with a tan color top? See the US Steel thing, USS? Look at that. And I wonder how the heck they get that from satellite views, because you'd have to kind of have like a side angle to even see it, right? Look at the cars down there. All of them modeled. Great. Excellent. Even little shrubs and stuff growing down there. Oh no, we got a filled-in power line tower. That's alright, there aren't too many of those. Most of them look really good. All the plow lines in the fields. Beautiful. Amazing. Alright, so you want to see what the view looks like from the back? We got a huge window back here. Oh, hold on, I gotta click on this screen. Check that out. That's just as good, maybe not quite as good, as that big Cessna Stationaire, the station wagon. Look at that train yard. Unbelievable. Oh, if they'd just gone like a quarter mile further out with the photogrammetry, they would have been able to catch all that stuff over there. That's a bummer. So close, guys, so close. You're gonna get a B on that one. Not a B minus, I'll give you a B. Look at that stuff, just great. Okay, if we look over here, you'll see the line where the photogrammetry, look at that, there's where it cuts off right there, and it just cuts right across all those buildings. Too bad. Look at this train yard. Alright, we're going to see one of those little tiny runways right up here. So you can see just how small they are, and this one's bigger than the one that we're going to be landing at too. And then I'll tell you a little bit about the town of Kosice. Let me zoom out some on little NavMap so I can see where we're going here. Alright, so that runway is... it'll come into view here in a second. So I'm probably going to have to break the history of this place up into segments, because we got some more landmarks that are going to kind of punctuate that. There's the runway right there. Look at that. Look how short that is. And that one is... well, that one's also 1,300 feet, so that's as long as the one we're going to be landing on. Almost the exact same length. But this is the largest city in eastern Slovakia, and the second largest in the whole country. I read they got somewhere between 230,000 and 250,000 people, depending on where you look. And for a place I'd never heard of, it seems like it's kind of a big deal. It was voted the European Capital of Culture in 2013. Not sure exactly what that means, but it sounds like a big deal. Along with Marseille, France, which I have heard of before. And like everything in Central and Eastern Europe, this place is old. Archaeologists have pulled stuff up out of here going all the way back to the Paleolithic era, which is about 12,000 years ago. But the first written reference of the area refers to it as Villa Casa, or maybe Villa Casa. I don't know how you say two L's in whatever language that is. And Casa has two S's too, so I don't think it's Spanish, maybe Portuguese, I don't know. And that was from around 1230 AD, so that was the first historical mention of it. And like Moscow, they had a little scuffle with the Mongols in the 1200s. And after all that chilled out, Germanic settlers were the first to start setting up shop out here. But unlike Moscow, everyone's pretty sure why this place got its start. If you recall that Moscow flight, you remember it wasn't really close to anything that people would normally stop at. But this used to be part of a major trade route that went from Hungary, which is to the south, up to Poland, or whatever those areas were known as back then. And people made a lot of money from that. There were several big castles and fortresses that they put out here, but again, you can't see the castles. Look at those fields. That bridge looks good down there. That is the Hornob River, which runs all the way through town, so we'll see that guy a couple of times. So all of those big lakes back there are former gravel quarries that are now just filled in with water. And this little town up here that we're going to see right when our wing picks back up is called Cana, or maybe Cana, C-A-N-A. And there's a little museum they got down there where they found some old ruins, which is pretty cool. Those quarries opened up, by the way, in the 1800s, which is when most of these little towns got set up near them. But these ruins, which are right here, here's the archaeological park. They say that that thing was probably set up around 1400 BC, and they said they probably chose that site because it was kind of up on a hill over here. But apparently it met a pretty nasty fate. They said people only lived there for about, there's where it would be right there. You really can't see anything of the little village that they built. But they said people only lived there for about 50 to 70 years, and the ruins they found were all burned up and looted, and they didn't find anything on the layers on top of that. So something bad happened to those guys, and they moved on out. And there's a little museum they have down there which did not render properly, so I'm not going to bother pointing it out. That's the site of an old monastery. They said that place is from about the 1200s, and they have a big Jesuit library in there from the 1500s, and they also have a piece of ritual bread that they said is about 3,700 years old. And you better believe I would stop by to see something like that. And as if all that's not cool enough, there is a set of tunnels that they think probably went from the museum, which is up by where that archaeological park is, down to where the quarries were. Of course, they're probably filled in with water now, so they said they're incomplete, but they think they went all the way down there at one time, and they're not sure what they were for. They figure it's probably for escaping from somebody. So getting back to the history of the city, in the 1300s, the money that was generated from the trade route brought a lot of Hungarian aristocracy out here, who built palaces all along the main drag that we'll check out here in just a little bit. And over the next several hundred years, they saw lots of fighting and sieges and burning and rebuilding. And through it all, the well-to-do still enjoyed visiting the area, leaving behind lots of palaces downtown, which can still be enjoyed today. But they're kind of tough to pick out from the air. There's one I'm going to try to point out that's from the 1800s, which is pretty easy to spot because it's got a big green copper roof. But other than that, I'll just kind of show you where they are. They're all around the downtown historic area. So let's see, this thing here, I believe, is a water treatment plant. There was a bookmark for that here, and you can tell they got all the ponds and pools there, but most water treatment plants don't have a big smokestack, but they got some gravel piles out there, so maybe they're still doing some gravel mining out there. And it looks like they got some very shallow pits out here. Look at these trains. Awesome. Looks so good. And this big thing that's about to come into view, oh no, they got some trees inside the buildings. Boy, that's an incredibly tall tree. They should put a museum around that thing. It's taller than the whole building. So this big thing up here is a big power plant. I'm sure of that because they have a big coal pile right over here and they got a bunch of power lines going into it. And I think a lot of these communities were built up as organized communities, like we saw out in the Netherlands when they started building these things up. Look at the detailing down there. Every little car, everything. Fantastic. We're going to get a really even better look at this once we come around from the other side, but they have just got every little pipe and valve and everything modeled down there. Some more rust on the buildings. Just fantastic. All right, so there's their big coal pile, and you can see the power lines they got coming in here. All right, we're going to cruise past the historic downtown area, and the two main things I want to point out are the St. Elizabeth's Cathedral and the National Theater. The first is going to be the cathedral. They broke ground on that in 1378 at the site of an older church of the same name that went back to at least 1230. Burning down a few times before they got started on this one, which is huge. I think it's the biggest one in Slovakia. And some of that money was donated by wealthy locals with a little help from the Pope, who said that anyone that gave money to the project would have their sins forgiven. So there's a big church there, and there's the big cathedral. And then this is the National Theater over here, and that was built in the 1800s by the guy that built that house right there, I think. That's called the Jacob Palace. Look at all these old churches, and all of these were the big wealthy palaces of the rich folk that were moving down here. They got another church over there. We're getting a little bit of frame rate issue, but that's to be expected out here. Alright, so we got to get up to 3,000 feet in just a minute, so we'll slowly start doing that. Yeah, but the whole selling of indulgences thing was about as popular here as everywhere else, so eventually during the Reformation, the Protestants took over that church and swapped it back and forth with the Catholics several times over the next few hundred years, usually violently. And now I think it's back in Catholic hands. And that National Theater down there, if you're into that kind of thing, you should take a look at some pictures of that place. Inside and out, just absolutely beautiful. And right at the start of that main strip, on the southern end of it, there is something called an underground museum, which runs underneath the whole length of that little area where the cathedral and the theater are. And they said they've found a bunch of very old roads and stuff down there, kind of like underground Rome, that you can go and tour, which also looked very, very cool. Alright, so we're going to come around and check out this incredible looking, I'm guessing it's probably another gravel mine, or aggregate mine maybe. And right before we get there, I'm going to see if we can spot a tunnel, a big railroad tunnel that's going into the side of this hill. So there is the mine over there. And the tunnel is a newer one now, but they have an old tunnel that I think used to be a train tunnel that you can still walk through. They said it's pretty cool to go explore that thing. We'll see if we can see the other tunnel at all. It's going to be up here just a little bit. Look at those little towns and villages down there. Alright, I'm going to lean out the window and see if we can see this tunnel. Alright, it's going to be right on the other side of this, so it pops out over here, and then the other side of it comes over here, so let's see if we can see the tracks going into it. So there's the tracks. Oh, it's probably going to be in a shadow. Doggone it. And then it goes in right there. Not very long, but it cuts underneath that town, which is cool. Look at that mine. Incredible. Power lines look amazing. I'm going to try to turn my head really slow. Alright, so we're coming up on the Kosice Zoo, and this one is like a... Well, if I was an animal, this is the kind of zoo I'd want to live in, where they don't have a bunch of tiny enclosures. They got a bunch of big open fields out here. And they built this place in 1985, or that's when it opened anyway. I think they started building it in 79. And they currently house around 1,200 animals across 280 species. And as of 2020, they had the second largest collection of animals in the country. So this is going to be it down here. This whole area is the zoo, and you can see the little walled off areas where each of the animal pens would be. And this part out here is the zoo, which just looks fantastic. Really nice. Look at this scenery. This is a one-slope ski complex out here. Well, maybe two. But on the Google map, they said there was just one. So if you want to get some skiing in, you can do that too. Man, I was really hoping we could even get the frame rates better. I can tell when I move my head around that... Oh, let's hop in that back window real quick. I've got my train level of detail turned down to 200, which is about as low as I like it. Oop, that's not the one I want to go to. Look at that. You can see the tiny little paths and everything. Those tiny little walls around there. Too bad we can't see any zebras or giraffes or anything walking out there. I guess we got enough of that in our safari tour. I mean, that is incredibly detailed. Look at... Someone's got a little grill pit or something down there. Maybe that's one of the feeding troughs for the animals. Amazing. Okay, up on the top of this hill over here is where the ruins of the big castle in this town are, and they call it Kosice Castle. But unfortunately, it's buried in the trees, and the area is quite a wonder. The whole thing is, they're not really sure who built it, precisely when it was built, though they think it was around the 1200s, and they also don't know why they built it. And they don't even know if it was ever fully completed. But the project would have been quite an undertaking, as it's one of the largest footprints of any fortification in Slovakia. And it's also pretty stout. Some of the walls, I said, are about 16 feet thick, so it would have been pretty big. And there's also a big lookout tower up here, which unfortunately, it should stick up out of the trees, but it doesn't. We won't be able to see that, so I'm going to see if we can... So this opening right here is where the ruins of the castle would be, but I flew down closer and couldn't see anything down there. It was too dark. Alright, so I'm going to hop in the back again, because there's a few other things that we got to check out over here that we'll definitely be able to see better from over here. Alright, the first thing is going to be a great big stadium. This thing right here, which I think is a multi-purpose stadium, and they're using it mostly for the local soccer club now. The university is right here. And they have a big botanical garden inside of this thing right here, which is a big greenhouse. And I'm not sure what this is here. This seems kind of like their central square, but over here, this thing, which we're kind of at a bad angle to see, is a big amphitheater, which is very nice. And this is the Steel Arena. I bet you know why they called it that and who owned it. And they say that thing is multi-purpose, but it looks like they probably do a lot of hockey in there. They also said they have some bodybuilding competitions and professional wrestling. Look at this town. What a view. What a view. Out here in Slovakia. Beautiful. And then this next stadium that we're going to see was just very recently completed in 2022. And you can see it looks like they're still building some parts of it out here, but this is where the city's big football club plays. That's soccer, football. Look at all this stuff. Perfect. Just absolutely perfect. Look at all these semi-trailers in here. Gosh, I love that. So good. And this is a big mall right here. Look at all the little cars and everything. Great. All right, we got to check out some dams. Let's jump back in the cockpit. Look at that. Sorry, I just got to linger here for a minute. Just amazing. All right, there's our airport again. All right, we're going to take a hard right turn here. I couldn't really get any information about these dams, so I don't know how old they are. But there's some little towns at the foot of both of them, so I'm sure they built the towns up after the dams. Or maybe not. I guess they would have had to move anyone out that was by the little river that was running through there before they dammed them up, though. But they do look good, and that's the only thing that really matters to me. And the town behind the first one is called Bukovec, and one interesting thing that jumped out at me about that place is a fairly modern-looking Catholic church. And the other is that inside of that thing they have a black Madonna. And that is worth mentioning because there's only about 180 of those in the world. Almost all of them in Europe. Apparently there was a Byzantine movement that produced a lot of them back in the 13th and 14th century. And as the name implies, they don't have the appearance of someone who's from Norway. And some of them have even been treated as miracles, where maybe they didn't start as black, but over time, either just through getting old, which is probably the more likely explanation, or a true miracle, they turned black. And some of them are carvings, some of them are marble statues. But only about a... They said the thing down here is an altar. There's where the church is right there. And I couldn't get a picture of it, so I don't know if it's like a freestanding thing or if it is a picture of the Madonna and Child. So here's the first dam, and look at this thing. Look at just how perfect that is. Beautiful. Almost makes me want to weep. And then the next one's going to be right on the other side of town up here, which looks even better than that one, if you can imagine it. Look at that. And there's another right on the edge of this dam over here, on this side of it. It looked like there was another marker for the ruins of another castle, and I did see some pictures of the ruins, which were not very substantial. But I couldn't find any information about it at all. But there was something very, very old and very ruined up in there. I mean, that is flawless, guys. It is just flawless. Look at that stuff. And the dam just ices the cake. I mean, they even got the little spillway thing or whatever that is down there. Usually dams down at the bottom kind of just get lost in the terrain, but you can even see that. Look at that thing. I can tell you for sure that that looks way better than all the dams I was trying to find in out in California. When we were looking at that Oroville Dam, the Oroville was the only one that looked good. None of the others even looked like dams. They were just big, slopey, running messes. So the ruins for that castle are somewhere right in here. All right, we're going to head out here just a little bit further so that we can make a big turn back down to the east to check out some beautiful little valley towns as we head back towards the city. And we're going to fly past a little town to our left called Vyshny Klatov, and it's pretty unremarkable other than a meteorite that landed there in 2010. And it's not very big, it's only about 6 inches across, but it's estimated to be around 4.5 billion years old. And I think it's part of a chunk of a 3-ton object that exploded around 21 miles up above the Earth. And they found a bunch of pieces of it out here, I think 64 pieces in total. And they don't even have it on display down here. They put it in a museum somewhere else. So I think they did put a little monument or something out here because there's not much else going on in this town. So if a meteorite landed out here, that was it. Yeah, I'd probably make a monument too. Look at this scenery. I bet this would look beautiful in the snow too. Alright, so let's see. We're just going to barely skim the tops of these mountains, but we will be fine at 3,000 feet. And we'll check out this little valley town, then we'll come in for our white-knuckled approach to that very, very small runway. But the stall speed on this thing at full dirty is around 60 knots, so it's not too bad for a twin-engine plane. Interesting how the forestation changes. You can see those look like more coniferous trees out here, and these appear to be something that might drop their leaves. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's a nice little touch. Just beautiful. Really, really nice area. So the moral of this story is I need to make sure that I'm checking out all of the city updates they do, even if I haven't heard of them, because what a gem this thing's been. So the deal with the Lisbon trip, I need you guys to help me out because I really, really would like to go back out there. But when I was doing my test flight, let's go ahead and pick up the pace just a little bit. When I took off from the main airport, Lisbon International, heading west towards the coast, off to the right, there's two big stadiums. One of the stadiums had one of those big spikes sticking out of it. It looked like a sim glitch. You guys have probably seen those around the world before. There's the town where the meteorite was, by the way. And then there's another big tower, which is also a POI, which is a double POI in the sim. I pulled out all of my other... I thought all of the other stuff that would put landmarks out there, and it was still a double POI in the sim. Like they were, the round things were right on top of each other, and that one looked like a spike as well. So if one of you guys wouldn't mind just hopping in a little plane, taking a quick little 5-minute trip, and letting me know if you're seeing those spikes. If you're not, that means I might be able to fix whatever's going on, pulling something else out of my community folder, because I'd really like to fly out there, but just let me know. If you're seeing them, I'll just assume it's a systemic problem. Look at this. They even got the little balls on the power lines down there. See that? Not sure why, because there's no airports around here, but in case any jerks like us are flying this close to the town, they've got them on there. That is just beautiful. So hopefully we'll be able to get back to Lisbon. Another little power line corridor up here. Also looks incredible. Look at this. Man. I mean, this really has every element I like to see for a little town flyover. Only thing it's missing is a volcano or a huge impact crater. An existing castle that we could check out would be nice too, but beggars can't be choosers. Okay, I'm going to get back down to 1,600 feet eventually, so I'm going to go ahead and set it for that and then just slowly descend, and I'll taper off our descent speed if we need to. So for the Discord server, I think we might have 20 people already. It's only been open for, what, 3 or 4 days? And I've already learned a couple things. I just posted a question in our flight school section, which is where you'll go if you want to have someone who may be an expert in a particular plane or some avionics, tell you how something works or how it should work. I just posted a question down there if someone wants to check it out regarding landing lights and when to turn them off and on. I don't know the answer to it. It's not a rhetorical question. And we've already had a flight recommendation in there. Someone's already told me how to get rid of that message sign when you hit waypoints for one of those GPSs that I was asking about, so I'm very grateful for that. And of course, we will have our quarterly competition for the best flight plan submitted. Winner of that will get a gift card to the sim vendor of your choice. So I guess we'll go ahead and start that. No one's submitted it yet, so I guess we'll start the clock when the first one gets submitted, if one ever gets submitted. And the link for that will be included in the video description, along with this exact flight plan if you want to take it yourself. And I have no add-ons to add for this, except the free one that comes in the sim for the city updates. And one more thing I want to mention, guys, if you want to check out any of our older flights, I don't know what we're going to do when 2024 comes around, because I can't have both programs installed in this computer. I don't know if I have enough room for it, so I guess we'll probably wait a week or two, make sure there's no major glitches before doing the switchover. But in anticipation for that, some of our earliest flights, I'll probably go back and re-record those. Every now and then I'll go back and re-watch them just because I find them interesting enough to go watch myself take a flight. Look at the rust on those buildings. And there's that power plant again. Look at that. Look at all the details. Look at the pipes and everything. Incredible. But when I first started doing the videos, if you've been around for a while or if you go back and check out the older ones, I was told by someone who had watched some of my, just to say, hey, do you like this? Is this something you'd subscribe to? They said, yeah, but you talk too fast. And I said, yeah, I know. I talk fast. And they said, well, just slow down and try it again. So when I go back and watch those old ones when I was intentionally trying to talk really slow, it just doesn't sound like me. It really bothers me. So I've gradually started deleting some of our oldest ones with the assumption that we'll probably just refly those again anyway in 2024 because there were some really cool flights in there. All right, we're going too fast. Let's slow down. So if you want to check out some of those older ones, I've already pulled about 15 of them down. And we don't get that many views on those anyway, so not a big deal, but that will be incrementally pulling them down. I'll probably pull down one for each new one that we load up, just going back to the beginning. I'm going to leave our Finding Machu Picchu flight up there because I get several views on that every week. I think that people like seeing that, but all the others don't get many hits, and I can't stand listening to myself. It's not like listening to Bob Ross or something. It's just so slow and easy, which just doesn't sound like me. All right, we got one more turn, and then we're coming in. So I'm going to slow way down, and we're as low as I want to be. So we'll go ahead and taper that off, and then we'll see if I can do this. We got to slow down a lot more. So I don't think I'm going to get a gear warning in this thing, because I didn't before, but we can go ahead and get those out now. And we'll get the landing lights back on. And wait till you see how tiny this runway is. So the flight recommendation that we got on the Discord server was for a little kind of a getaway island, a resort island off the eastern coast of Spain. So I'll probably check that one out. And there's a lot of add-ons available for it too. All right, autopilot off. So we'll go check that place out, maybe cruise out there. And I want to do a Vegas flight at some point. Let me know if you guys want to see that. I'm sure everyone's flown over Vegas, but I do have that Fly Tampa pack, which is one of my absolute favorites. And I'm having trouble seeing the runway right now. Where is the thing? It's so tiny. Well, oh, there it is. It's dead ahead of us. All right, so we got to slow down some more. Let's get some flaps out. We gotta slow way down. Let's just go ahead and cut the throttle. I've lost the runway. I don't see it anywhere. Oh, here it is. It's way over here. Okay. Okay. It's so small, it's hard to see it. And we're gonna wind up stalling. Okay. There we go. Well, that's good, because I thought that other thing was a runway, and there was a bunch of trees right in front of it, which would not have been a good situation. Alright, we're going to land this bush plane style. Alright, I want to try to be right about at 60 knots. Coming in there and try to hit it as close to that threshold as I can. This thing has good brakes, fortunately. Well, what is that, a floating goat or something down there? See that? And we got about a 4-knot crosswind, not too bad. Watching that airspeed. Give it a little rudder right here at the very end. And cut it. Don't worry, we'll stop. Got some nice big brakes on here. We only need about 30 feet of runway. Ooh, 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 rudder, 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 rudder. Don't hit the house. Okay. Look at that. Alright. That's how you do it, at the shouties. Alright, we'll just pull over here to the left, and then we'll take a look at little NavMap real quick. And I will go through the shutdown procedure, which isn't super long, but I need to get some practice since I've only flown this about 4 times now. Alright. So parking brake on. Let's get our flaps back up. So the first thing is autopilot master off, then the avionics off, and then our... let's see, the field's off, whatever those are, the generators probably, and whatever these crossfit. You know, I never turned that one back on. Didn't seem to matter. And then the ignition off, and then the master off. Okay, that's easy enough. Okay, that's it. Let's open the door too. Fantastic. What a fun little flight. Okay, so some of the things that we checked out here. So here's where we took off from, and obviously the biggest airport by far in the area, but look how many tiny little runways are out here. Look at all these things. They're all over the place. Every one of them is paved. And let's see, 1,300, there's one that's 1,500, so that's a real long one. 16 here and here. They get a few. That one's almost 1,700, but all the rest of these are pretty small. That one's really small. 1,200. Let's take that steering off. All right, so we came down here first by the U.S. Steel place, and look at this. That's the thing that didn't get modeled, and that's what I really wanted to see. We got these blast furnaces, but this is the thing that was smoking over there. That did not get modeled, but that would have looked just incredible. Look how filthy that is. And they did have piles here, but they weren't either coke or coal piles. It's probably coke, I'm sure. They look like dirt piles. That's not too far off. These are pretty big flat buildings, but that thing would have been incredible. All right, we flew past here, looked at that tiny little runway. Here's the flooded quarries. And here is where the archaeological park is, where the people lived for about 50 years before they got run out of town and burnt their place down. And then here's where the old monastery and the museum is with the 3,700-year-old piece of bread. I just want to see a picture of that even. That would be satisfying for me. And the tunnels, I guess, would go down here. I wonder if they went under the river. If they went to the quarries, they would have had to. All right, so then we came up this way. And this is about where the photogrammetry started again, because if you look down here, they got some beautiful little construction equipment sitting down here. All of it is really detailed, really cool. Here is where the sewage treatment plant is, and they do have a bunch of gravel out there, so I'm guessing they're doing some gravel processing at this place, which is where that smokestack was. And then we came up here to this power plant, which is the one that looked really awesome. There's their coal heap, and you can't really see the power lines from here. That's fine. Okay, here's the downtown area where all the historic stuff is. So this is the main area where the entrance to the underground museum goes right here. That's a little tunnel right there that goes underneath this whole street, where you can see some old street stuff that's even older than these because it's underground. And there's the National Theater, and this is a tower. I can't remember what that was called. I didn't think we'd be able to see it in the sim, but as we flew by, I noticed that we could, and there was something of significance about that as well. And then here is where the big house was that the guy that built, I think, the National Theater built that for himself. Oh man, and I bet you could have seen these gardens here too, but we were just a little bit, we were right over them. Should have pulled out a little further to check that out. This train yard looked just amazing also. If you want to just come over a little further or just take another sweep around, this is just an amazing looking train yard here, so you should check that thing out too if you like that kind of stuff, like I do. And then we cruised up here, and here is where that tunnel is. So here's where it spits out on this side, and right next to it is where the entrance to the old tunnel is that you can go through. It's not lit or anything, so bring your flashlights and probably something to cover your face with, because I would bet it probably smells like urine. And then here's the output of that thing, which even there it's under a shadow. And then here's that quarry. That thing just looked unbelievable. And even that stuff looked right. That was right. Wow. That looked amazing. That was one of the best quarries I've ever seen. That was great. So here's the zoo up here, and you can see that looked exactly right. They nailed everything. And where was that little thing that we saw down here? That might be it right there. Whatever that thing was that I thought might be a feeding trough. I think we saw that. But look at this place. Pretty big. And they got animal stuff out here. You can see they got the little shelters and stuff at all the little spots where the animals could go into. So that's great. Good for you guys, having a real zoo where animals can actually roll around. And then here's where that old castle ruins is. And here's where that lookout tower is, which, doggone it, did not get modeled. But you can see some of the walls of that thing there. And again, I tried to get a better look at it, but I could not see the walls. But that's where that is there. No one's sure why it's there or who built it or why. Okay, so we came down here, and here is the Locomotive Stadium, which I think is for mostly football these days. And then here's the college campus out here. And then there's where the botanical gardens are right there. And here's the amphitheater, which you can see much better from here. And here's that thing that looked like their big square. And it's just got some parking in it right now. But that's a pretty big amphitheater there. And then here is the Steel Arena, where they're playing hockey and doing bodybuilding competitions. And you can see here, the stadium isn't even complete yet. They don't have the turf down yet. So they're still working on it. And here's that huge mall. Awesome. Okay, and then we came to my favorite part up here. So here's that first dam, which looked exactly like that. Fantastic. And here's where that church is with the Black Madonna in it. And that thing is kind of neat looking. If I would have spent a little more time looking at it, it's very modern looking for a Catholic church, but that's where you can go see the Black Madonna if you want to check one of those out. And here's that other dam, which also looked just flawless, unbelievably good. Even that thing was out in the water, which is just great. And then here's the ruins of whatever that thing was, a castle of some kind out there. And they had like 10 pictures when I looked at it of an outhouse that's sitting out there. I don't know why they put that in there, but I guess if you need to go to the bathroom, you can stop there. Okay, there's a little town that we circled around, and here's the place where the meteorite landed. And somewhere out here they have something that looks like a tombstone that's the memorial for that, but I could not figure out where it was. And then we came down here and checked out this little valley. I love this. This whole area over here was just incredible. Just a beautiful, beautiful little trip down there. There's that big power line corridor that was going out there. And then coming back over this side, we got the really nice look at that power station. And they even nailed that. Look, there's some of those pipes that were sticking out. Just incredible. Good job. And then I weaved back and forth trying to figure out where the runway was. And there's where it was. We made it down. Awesome. So that's Kosice, guys. Very cool. Where we go next, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I got plenty of places I can go, but give me some suggestions. I'm going to take a flight out over that place by Spain that was recommended, so we'll check that one out. It may be next, maybe Vegas, who knows. But I'm sure it's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.